right, here we go. It's another edition of Rock Talk right here with Bob Bannister and CGCM Rock Radio. This time around, we're joined by another great Aussie band. We're joined by the band Black Whiskey. Well, joining us from that band is Will. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I hope you are too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I love this modern technology where I can be here in Canada and you're there you're in Melbourne, right?
Brisbane, actually.
Brisbane. Okay.
Up in Brisbane, yeah. Up in the sunny, warm part of the country. So, yeah.
There you go. A little closer to the equator.
That's it. That's the one.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us the quick version of Black Whiskey? Who is Black Whiskey?
Sure. Well, Black Whiskey is myself on bass, and Alan's our singer. Dan is our guitarist, and Mark is our drummer. We all had the same sort of musical interests and influences, and got together and thought we'd give it a bash, and so far so good. Yeah. So our sound it's sort of hard to, it's Aussie rock is what it's obviously, it's tagged as pub rock, Aussie rock, Australian rock, that sort of thing. So we've got a little bit of the AC/DC and Rose Tattoo type sound in our music, but it's along those. And someone's actually even reckoned we sound a little bit like Airborne, but it's all different. It's all fun. We've all got different tastes and different genres that we personally listen to, and it all sort of comes together when we start writing material.
And you know what? You said that you're dubbed Aussie rock. You know what? Around here, we just call that damn good.
Well, thank you, and I hope we fit into that damn good category.
Absolutely. And you guys just released a new album, Last Temptation. Absolutely digging that album. Give us a little bit of an insight to this album, if you can.
Well, we wanted to put an album out after we did the EP a few years ago, and the EP did really well. So we started writing intensely and came up with a few different songs and came up with a few more. And from those, we picked out what we thought might be the cream of the crop. And we thought, they all sort of tell a bit of a different story. There's a sort of hills and valleys type thing. You've got to keep that. You can't keep everything that same, which sort of the EP, even though I had 5 songs on it, was just a straight up rock EP, and that was introducing us. But with the next material that we just started working on now, hopefully it'll branch out a little bit more and show a bit more diversity. But Last Temptation, it's our first hit out at an album. We're very proud of it. It took a while to get together. Not cheap to put an album out when your own finances are involved. And our production team's actually, we've got one studio that we use here for mixing and mastering, and then our main production team. Well, they're all our main production team, but the guys that we used on the EP, we used Michael James out of San Francisco, who's worked with a lot of big names as far as mixing and that, and we worked real closely with him to the point of I would call him sort of our Bob Ezrin, if our music guys out there know the name.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very influential. Had a lot of great ideas on, let's do this. Maybe this will enhance it. Maybe this will make it a little bit better. And then after we had everything mixed, we took it to Dave Donnelly from DNA Mastering, and he's worked with Alice Cooper and Motley Crue. He's actually a member of the board on the Grammys. And
oh, wow.
Dave mastered it down for us, and the finished product is The Last Temptation.
And listeners, if you haven't listened to this album, I definitely recommend it. It is an amazing, amazing album. Definitely check it out. And it's interesting. We're starting to get a lot of rock bands making appearance here in Canada. We're hearing more stuff, and I would say that Australian rock is just really starting to crest that wave.
It's good to hear, because it's sort of can be in a bit of a doldrums at times, because unfortunately, a lot of the places post-COVID, the smaller venues, like the pubs and clubs, so to speak, a lot of them didn't survive that period of being locked down and no one could go out and no one could mingle. And then you had the social distancing thing, which sort of reduced your crowd numbers at least by half, if not more. So the smaller operators found it real hard, and a few of them fell by the wayside and never bounced back, which is a little bit sad, because there are a lot of great venues that, we've played over our time and that sort of thing that just aren't around anymore. So you've really got to look where you're going to play, branch out, get out of your own town. We'd love to come to Canada.
And we'd love to
We
have
would
you.
love to come to Canada. That'd be awesome. So never say never. That's the thing. There's always that possibility that we can get out of our own country, and it's not only the expense, but you've got to do it right. So you've got to have all your paperwork sorted out. You can't just sort of wing it and go anywhere these days. There's always someone saying, you might have to do this. You might have to
Exactly.
pay us something more.
Yes. Yes. And I almost feel like European bands have got a major advantage. I mean, how they can travel through all of Europe there and, play all those different countries within like 2 weeks time and play so many different cities where Australian bands, Canadian bands are at that disadvantage. I mean, yeah, okay, some Canadian bands can afford to go down to the States and tour down there, but up here, we're pretty much in the same situation as you. COVID struck, and a lot of the venues closed, and where do you go?
True.
It's
And we've also noticed too, like post-COVID, and it's no one's fault. I think it's just a business model, is that the cost of traveling, whether it be airfares, has gone through the roof. Hopefully it
yes.
might settle back down. But yeah, like post-COVID flight, the cost of flying and that it's just ridiculous. It's so expensive, which is a shame because there's so many bands that are out there that we would hope that could go, even if it was just interstate.
Mhm.
Can't afford to because of the cost of traveling and putting gear on planes and that sort of thing. It all adds up. So if you don't want to get in your station wagon and drive, which been there, done that, I'll get on a plane now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite taxing on the pocket.
So back in pre-COVID days, when a band could do some relative touring, where would a band from Australia go? I mean, you what play New Zealand and then maybe what Japan or
Well, that's our next step. Hopefully, is New Zealand and Japan. We're sort of in the sort of talking stages about that. But there are a lot of places just to go interstate. I mean, we've had some successful trips to Sydney, and there are a lot of places in Sydney and the outer sort of reaches of the city. And been down to Melbourne, played down in Melbourne, and that went really well. And then you've got Adelaide, and if you want to go right across the country to Perth. The worst thing, not the worst thing, but probably the difficult thing about Australian touring is if you were to hit just the capital cities, you're either traveling for a really long time and you're not on the road that long because unless you plan it and do rural, and that's what we look
Mhm.
at is doing rural, like playing bars and pubs and that don't get a lot of live material and sort of do that and plan your trip. I said to the guys, because I actually lived in the States for a few years at the beginning of the 2000s. I said, at least with America, if you're on tour and played, I think like one state every week, you'd be on tour for a year.
Oh yeah.
So, big difference in demographics there. But hopefully we'll get over to New Zealand and definitely the boys are talking about Japan and that's something else that we'd really love to do and see if hopefully they take to us and enjoy our live show too.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that we've both touched on here is COVID. Have you heard of the Canadian band Diraps?
I haven't personally, no.
Okay, it's an interesting story because I shouldn't say they're purely Canadian because the guitar player Jacob is from Montreal. The drummer, I believe his name is Jacob as well, is from Australia, and they hooked up online during COVID and started doing music back and forth just as a quick jam. And next thing you know, bingo, bango, bongo, they've got an album out and they've had some hits here in Canada. Do you see the music industry as kind of homogenizing that way? And you
It,
know,
it is. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years now. I won't say how long, but yes, I've seen a lot of changes. I remember when I first started doing this as a young guy many a year ago. Um, you'd go to a studio and you'd physically record something in a studio, and that would go to a mastering or mixing plant, and you would actually get something that would come out on vinyl. Or cassette. This is pre-CDs, mind you.
mm-hmm.
And then you'd go around and you'd put them in record stores and you'd have your products sold at a record store. Now it's like if you've got a good computer and you know how to interface and record, you don't even have to be able to sing all that great because they can fix that these days too. And it's not the downside of the industry, but I think it makes it a little bit too easy sometimes. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of guys, and I know a lot of good musicians that have worked their way up. They've played the small venues, they've honed their craft and that sort of thing, and then they'll go and they'll record something. Whereas now, you can go on something like The Voice and win it, and next thing you know, you're a big recording artist, which is sort of like we haven't paid your dues. That's the thing.
yeah.
That's what I see. A lot of the time that these, and half the time once they've won something, like 12 months later, well, where are they?
That's
I never
true.
hear of them again half the time. That's the trouble.
That's true. And interesting thing that you mentioned there about all the cost that goes into producing an album. I was talking to one of our Canadian artists over here, and he was saying that it's not conducive for him to release an album. It's actually more economically feasible for him to keep releasing singles every month or so.
Yeah. Production wise, that's probably true because it doesn't cost as much to record, have someone mix your single and have someone master your single and then put it out either digitally or even put it out as physical copies as a CD, which is what we did. We put a physical copy of the album out several months ago just to try and recoup a little bit of the costs and that sort of thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
we held off on the digital release until just recently, which means the CDs will be for sale at gigs and that sort of thing. We
Right.
don't put, of course, but that's the trouble these days. It is to do a single, you might get away with it for maybe $1,000 or something like that. When you put 10 tracks on an album, well, times that by 10,
Yeah.
and it's a big expense. It is especially when it's coming out of your own pocket. There's no record companies throwing wads of cash at people to record and put something out. It'd be nice if they used to, but now it's pretty much. And the same goes for touring. I know a lot of guys that, oh, we've been to the UK, we toured the UK, we've toured Japan, and that's great. More power to you. But a lot of the times they're self-financed, and
Yeah.
that's not cheap. If you want to travel, you're probably going to pay for it yourself, unless you can get some sort of grant or find a bottle on the beach somewhere and give it a rub, and the blue guy comes out and says, "Hey, let's go on tour." It's not a cheap thing to do, but if you love it, you'll do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? It's kind of the same thing for us radio guys. Like I've been in radio for a long time myself, and now any guy with a microphone and a laptop can do it out of their own basement or their own bedroom. It's kind of disheartening in a way after you've paid your dues for quite a while.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, there are a lot of great bands out there that may not be getting the sort of recognition that they deserve because you've got a lot of other bands that have just like been into their bedroom, recorded something, put it out, and it sounds good. You got to admit, you
Mhm.
pretty hard up to sound bad with technology the way it is today.
Yeah.
Um, and you've got the good bands struggling to sort of get out there and make a name for themselves. So hopefully, I don't know what to do. I mean, Gene Simmons said, "Well, rock and roll is dead." I don't believe that rock and roll is dead,
Mm-mm.
but I think the industry's taken a real back seat to what it used to be. No more record labels giving out contracts on, the way they used to, put it that way. They're not paying people to put out a
No,
product. They'll put your product out, maybe at a cost,
that's
but
right.
it's even hard to get onto labels and management these days because there's just so much out there that they've got to pick and choose from.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's have a little bit of fun before we wrap up this interview here. If I was to come over to your house and start digging through your music collection, what's one album that you have in your music collection that I might hold up and go, excuse me, what's this? It's your Guilty Pleasures album.
Um, Guilty pleasures. Well, I've actually been listening to. I like Wings, Paul McCartney and Wings.
Oh yeah.
So I've got Venus and Mars in the car at the moment. I've been listening to that quite a bit. Believe it or not, my musical tastes skew from Iron Maiden, Halloween, Dead Daisies, all the way down to Eddie Cantor, Al Jolson. So
Mhm.
that's pretty diverse. You've got show tunes, you've got movie soundtracks, you've got hard rock. So that's sort of a bit of an open slather as far as what I listen to. But yeah, I would say at the moment, a lot of Wings. I like Wings. Like a bit of ABBA. Can't
Right
knock
on.
their music. It's pretty popular.
Absolutely. So let's finalize some things here. I'm going to we're going to go into a section called This or That. It's just a 5 quick rapid fire questions. I give you 2 choices. You give me your top of your head answer. So we're going to start off, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Summer or winter?
Depends what country I'm in at the time, but I'd say summer.
Club gig or festival gig?
Festival gigs are so much the atmosphere. Festival gig, yeah.
Beach or amusement park?
Ooh, for me personally, I'd say amusement park.
Oh, you're a roller coaster guy. I knew it.
I like the old amusement park. So cool.
Steak or seafood?
Steak.
And finally, this is the big dividing one. We've had pretty much a 50-50 split on the answer for this one. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
My missus listening? She likes pineapple. No, for me, no.
Right on, right on. Well, hey, why don't you hit us up with your socials and let us know where fans can get more information about Black Whiskey.
Sure. Well, I think everyone these days has a Facebook page, and we do. So you can just look for us on Facebook. We've got our Black Whiskey official website. If you were to Google Black Whiskey Brisbane Band, it will take you to the link, and that will take you straight to our official website. There's some merch there. We've got shirts, we've got stubby coolers, there's CDs if you'd like a physical copy. We do ship internationally, which is a bonus. The Spotify, look up Black Whiskey on Spotify. That's where you'll find all the previous stuff, and the current album is on Spotify and all your major what do you call them? The digital streaming platforms. And we don't have vinyl. I'm sorry.
Oh, but
Not
you know
yet,
what?
not yet.
Not yet, but it's coming, is it?
We're thinking about it. That's
You're
another
thinking
thing.
about it.
It's inexpensive.
Okay.
It's not cheap, but we'd love to put an actual album out. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, Will, from Black Whiskey, for joining us on this edition of Rock Talk. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, Bob, thanks for having me anytime, man. And I hope everyone enjoys the album that's out, and hopefully we'll get over to see you guys in the not too distant future.
That would be absolutely amazing. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Rock Talk with Bob Bannister right here on CGCM Rock Radio.